All right, welcome to the Stoke Podcast. Today is a mix-up. We have Kat Cozad on the podcast today, a long friend from Gunnison, Colorado. We went to elementary school, middle school, high school together, and she is doing amazing things in the world, and I'm excited to have her on. Welcome to the podcast, Kat.
Thank you. We went to all the schools together. We've like really seen each other through it all.
Yeah, seriously, like um all the phases, when you kind of grow up, like you're like, oh yeah, that was my douchebag phase, that was my weightlifting phase. Um
Both of us like had the little like kind of like outsider kid phase where we were like a little chunkier than everybody else and people made fun of us and we were like, hey, at least we're in this together.
Kat, I'm so stoked you brought that up. Yeah, like literally my seventh, I think just like my middle school was so hard because all the guys were kind of hitting puberty and I was not really hitting puberty. I was just putting on body mass, which is normal, like we're
Yep.
growing up and so insecure, like just going on trips. I didn't want to take my shirt off, just it's like so I
Yeah,
think
when we would go on like boat days, it was awful. You and I always had our shirts on.
shirts on, not taking the shirts off, not gonna go swim,
No.
and it's so sad. Like, and I think it propelled like a very toxic relationship with my body image through my high school career. Like,
Yep.
yeah, like I really got addicted to my body image and how that looked and my relationship, the way I looked in the mirror compared to how other people saw me, just so sad.
Yep, absolutely. Same. I resonate with that so much. That's something that like I feel as though finally in the past year and a half, I'm like, oh, okay, we're good now. Like I feel good in this skin, where I'm at in my life, my mental, emotional, physical, spiritual connection to myself. So I'm like, okay, we're good. But all of that to say, great that we've been through it together.
Totally. Yeah. And it's so super like heartwarming that I'm talking to you. It's not like I'm talking to someone like, don't get me wrong. I love talking to new people on the podcast, but it's almost like a little sense of home. So it's really just two friends catching up. And I think for the listeners, it's going to be super cool because the reason I say it's a little mix up if you're joining into the podcast is you are someone that's not usually on my podcast, right? I like usually have ultra endurance athletes. I have people like nutritionists. I'm very like in that health field or like endurance stories and you are what would you describe your line of work?
So I would say that I'm a life coach, but I specialize in teaching people about manifestation and the law of attraction. Specifically, I mean, in all aspects, but a lot of the time within your finances to help you live your best, most fulfilling, abundant life. And being able to use like that innate power that we all have to like harness the power of your mind and your energy to move the direction in your life in the way that you want to versus like how a lot of the times we think we have to based off of the conditionings and the stories and the narratives that we learned growing up, but then also beyond that.
That is so cool. Because to be honest, I have such a bad relationship with money and I look at your posts and they're so interesting and cool and I've actually started to change the way I my relationship with money and if you for me it's like I always thought of it as not enough or never coming in enough, right? And if you treated a friend that way, how would your friend treat you, That's I
Totally.
think I honestly saw that from your Instagram and it completely changed the way I saw money. It's like, oh,
Totally.
treat it as a friend, right? Like, and yeah, it's completely helped. And so what do you say, like, what do clients come to you with, like, are there, yeah, can you explain a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So basically, I feel like for the listeners who may be like, what the hell is manifestation? I'm here for endurance sports. Manifestation is essentially just using your thoughts and your subconscious mind to create your reality. A lot of the times it gets a bad rap where it's like people write things down in their journal and then sit around and magically wait for those things to show up. And that's like quite the opposite of what manifestation actually is. It's just taking a more intentional role in your life and like stepping into the version of yourself that like you want to be, who you know you are at your core. And a lot of the times, what I said with like, the stories, the narratives that we learn into society, they disconnect us from our truth and like who we are at our core. So it's really just about bringing people back to that. So a lot of the times, like clients will come to me in some sort of like major life transition. They either like followed what I like to call the prescribed path, where they graduated from high school, they were told to go get a degree, they got that degree, they then went into the field of work or tried to find some sort of work in what their degree was, and they're super unhappy. And they're like, okay, well, I'm feeling miserable within this. Like, how do I switch gears and how do I reconnect to something that's going to make me feel fulfilled, but also allow me to make money within that? Um, or people will come to me in the place where they've had such a challenging relationship with money for such a long time and they don't know how they could possibly change their financial reality and start to like learn how to make that a reality, because that was my case. I was $70,000 in debt, working 60 plus hours a week as a barista, making $8.25 an hour back in 2019. And now I'm a multiple six-figure entrepreneur living in New York City. And like that shift happened in such a short amount of time because of this piece of like, okay, taking this intentional creator role in your life where you're harnessing the power of your mind and your energy to be able to choose what is true for you versus adopt limitations and these different things that, whether it be society or parents or the environment that we grow up in or teachers or the media or whatever it may be, try to force on us as like the social narrative that we need to adopt.
That is perfect. And I think a lot of people, me at 21, would listen to that and say, sweet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to think of what I want to be. I'm going to write it down and I'm going to wait until it happens. But I think, if you're listening to this, a big step in that is the action part, right? Like you won't see any of those fruitions come true unless you are taking the steps to make it a reality, living in the
Mhm,
reality. Because I think for me, it was really hard to manifest things
mhm.
because I was like, what is that? Right. You just sit and you wait, but it's the doing it every day, the small things that don't seem like they're apples on the tree. They're like,
Yep.
just the leaves, but the leaves, I don't know. So, but yeah, that's
Totally.
really cool.
I think so. Quinn, what comes up for me on that is like, I can imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is like in sports, in like everything that you do, there's this mind body connection where it's like the body's the doing part, where you're actually like getting on the bike or running the race or whatever it may be. But if you're not in the right mental state for that thing's going to feel miserable or you're just not going to do it. The same is true from that in everything where it's like, okay, so whether that be my finances or finding a partner or stepping into a career path that serves and supports me in terms of fulfillment, but then also monetarily and financially and brings me what I want. It's like, if the brain and the body aren't connected with each other, then you're only having one half of the equation, and that's not enough in order for you to get what you want. It has to be both of these things brought online and being in this place of like, oh, okay, like brain saying, yes, I can do this. Here's why. I'm going to like create these beliefs and like this narrative around why I can push through this uncomfortable period of time, whether it be something in sports or something financially. And then the body following in suit with that of like, okay, then I'm going to keep running, or I'm going to shift and change what I'm doing in terms of my spending habits or the way in which I'm approaching my relationship with money so that I can actually get the result that I want.
Yeah, and you're right. Because a lot of things on on the bike or like in the endurance world translates to life so freakishly weird. Like the races that I do are anywhere from 2 hours to 9 hours. Now imagine just like
Oh,
nine
that's
hours,
amazing.
like 9 hours of pushing the body to like the absolute extreme. You go through like euphoric highs, very low demonic lows. You find the steady states, you find, like I cry out there. So the the bike's a metaphor for life, but and it's so true because like most of most of the endurance world is getting through the mind because the body you train all year, you sharpen your tool. Like that's what I do every day. I'm sharpening the tool, but who's the master working the tool? Like that is the person that needs to be, you know, looking at like a course profile or what they're going to eat or their water, their food, and then the belief that, you know what, this looks pretty hard, but I'm going to go out there and I'm going to smash it. I know I can do it. I know I'm very well prepared. Because yeah, like you said, if I come into this like this is going to be so hard. I don't know if I'll be able to finish. You are now just projecting your future self to not finish, because you're already putting it out there. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish. I never say that before a race. I'm like, I'm going to fucking kill this race. And if I don't, then I don't, because there's a lot of things that you can't control out there. And so it's just translating as an athlete into everyday life is so hard because
Mhm.
it's kind of like an addiction. Like we're all addicted to this like feeling of of misery in a way. Oh, cut out a little bit. One sec. We're back. Okay. This feeling of misery, like endurance sports, we're addicts, there's trauma behind a lot of endurance sport athletes.
Mhm.
Which I think is why when I do go into like the real world to finding like work and jobs, like I'm not stimulated, so it's very
Mm,
hard for me to be like, I need a job that's very stimulating or I'm very creative. I need to be always like creating things or um man, like I just need to be doing things that are creative and that's always pushing forward. So that's where I think my struggle has been coming into the real world is not finding that good enough balance of stimulation
mhm.
because when you're on the bike, you're I have ADD. I have I need to be moving. So on a bike, I can it's my Zen space, but
Yep.
in the real world, I feel like something's not clicking.
Mhm.
Oh, but I have a daughter, I have a wife, I need to pay my rent. I want to have a savings account, and so I think I'm just speaking for that person who's out there who's just like, yeah, I'm the same way, like I feel really at home on the bike, but when I'm at my job, I hate it. So
Totally. Okay, so my question for you is like, why do you have to have a normal person job then? Like,
I,
why do you have to return to the real world? It's like if the real world is somewhere that doesn't serve and support Quinn in the way that you want to be supported, then why partake? It's like I think about that for me as well. And I relate so much to what you're saying because I dropped out of college and I was told time and time again, like, Kat, you're not going to make anything of yourself if you do not go back to university. So I thought my only option was to work in the food and beverage industry. I worked in the food and beverage industry for what, 5, 6 years. And I was really good at it. I climbed the ladder at every single place that I went to because I was like, okay, like what I need to stimulate me is to climb the top of the ladder, make it the best thing I possibly can, like be really good at this because I'm innately like very driven. But it was like this belief of like, okay, this is all that I could do based off of this circumstance and this belief that I was essentially like given. It was never my own in the first place. It was something that somebody pushed on me as narrative until I stepped into this place where I was like, the reason that none of these things are fitting for me and the reason that like finishing university and whatnot wasn't meant for me is because those things aren't meant for me. I'm meant for something where it's like, okay, like go off and create your own. Like step into what feels like actually like you're going to utilize that feeling of like passion or power inside of yourself. And it's not probably going to make sense to anybody else around me because they are like conforming to these different things. But especially like you're saying, like on this podcast, people who are listening to it, they're endurance athletes. Like they're also probably in that place of like, oh, okay, like how do I pair the real world with this? And it's like, why do you have to? Why can it not be like something that is out of the box that is going to fulfill somebody in that kind of way instead?
That's awesome. And that's, I think, where most people struggle is it's the misery of like, this is what you need to do, going to college. And like, I have a degree that I don't even use, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've spent the last 3 or 4 years really trying to figure out what it is that floats my boat, because you can't really necessarily be a professional elite athlete. Well, I hate saying it that way, but there's a lot of ways to make money doing this sport, right? But
Mm-hmm.
to be at the top of the game, you have to be dedicating, your income because you need to train 4 hours a day. And, so it's just hard. Like a lot of people thinking about it is just so crazy. It's like, how can I ever do that? I have a family.
Mm-hmm.
I need to pay rent. If I were to just start training to be a professional athlete, I won't be able to pay rent this month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Are you open to my suggestion on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so our brain has this really cool thing called the reticular activating system, which essentially looks for evidence to prove our beliefs to be true for ourselves. So, simple shift in narrative of what you're saying to like, I can't do that, to a way of like, okay, I'm going to start to ask myself the question of, how can I do that? Like, show me ways to make, whether it be like being a professional athlete in this space or like something that is not that, but is going to still give you that same sort of stimulation and like bring you to a place of feeling really fulfilled within the work that you're doing and also like highly compensating you. It's like
Mhm.
starting to ask yourself that question of like, okay, like, how can I do that? What is available? What's out there that can like provide those different things to me? Because then your reticular activating system is going to look for evidence day in and day out without you consciously having to look for it to prove that there's things out there that can fill that role.
Interesting. Because you always think of why not, why I can't, um, because it's easy to stay in your bubble. you
Mm-hmm.
know? And sometimes it's easy to stay in the bubble of that hardship too. The no money, the struggle, it's familiar, like it's familiar and
Yep.
it's safe, and I don't know anything different.
Yep.
So go even moving into like an abundant circle. It's new, it's scary, and it's uncharted, and I don't know how to get there. That's
Mm-hmm.
also a big gap for me as well, right? Like it's there's so many different ways to come up with excuses.
Totally. Oh man, I was so good at all of those and I still am sometimes, which is like the thing to I feel like for all of us is like when we recognize that excuses are coming up, it's literally just the brain trying to keep you safe from something that it doesn't think is safe.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the times people like to try and beat themselves up for those excuses, but it's like, okay, if I can make myself feel a bit more safe, then I'm more likely to go take that risk or pursue that thing that I want to pursue.
Interesting. What are some advice that you would give someone who like wants to even start to manifest something other than money or wealth, like for instance, health, right? Like
Mhm.
um just feeling better in their body. Because I'm glad we're talking today too, is I'm trying to quit nicotine as well. And
Mhm.
talk about the easiest way to excuse of getting more. Like the
Mhm.
brain for me, it's like, well, dude, and it's like nicotine pouches, like those little
Mhm.
zins, and like
Zins.
and they suck and they've just taken over my life. But it's so funny the way my brain, like I hear my brain talk to me and it's such a bro. It's like, oh dude, stop by the gas station, let's get a little zen, let's get our day rolling. And I'm like, ah, you're right.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm walking in there. I'm like, I'll take a 3 milligram. I walk out and then I put one in. I'm like, the fuck? Where were you, dude? And you're like, the brain is such a, it's a trickster. It's like, so today I've gone all day, no nicotine. It's my like first day. I ordered some like nootropic pouches to help me like get off of it, but
Yep.
also something like that's interesting because the brain in so many other ways is the same way of like such a bro, or it's like your girl best friend too. It could just be like, ah, sis, like we're
You're
gonna
good. You deserve it.
yeah, you deserve it. Yeah, you deserve putting your feet up and taking it easy today. But on the contrary, there's also something in my brain that's also like, get your fucking ass up, dude, and time to go to the gym or time to get on the bike. Like,
Yep.
there's also that, like, the the person I look up to that's in me.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, no, time to get your shit together, time to be with your daughter, time to,
Yep.
so uh
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that like two things with that. First one is that everybody has those like combating voices inside of their heads. And the coolest and another really crazy thing is like none of those voices mean anything unless you assign meaning to them. We can really be the observer of our thoughts versus like the person who's either like a victim or a volunteer to them. And so, specifically within that situation, and then taking it to the space of health, like somebody who's wanting to manifest health, is becoming acquainted with the stories that are currently running in the brain of like, what are you telling yourself is true about yourself? And I'll use myself as an example. So, back in the beginning of 2022, I had literally like put every single ounce of my focus into like creating a successful business and like still having some fun on the side of that. But I didn't put any focus into my health. And I ended up in the place where I had such intense brain fog and exhaustion that like I would sleep for 14 hours and then I would wake up and feel like I needed to like go back to bed and take another nap. And on top of that, like I had chronic acne. I was completely bloated all of the time. My joints were achy, like all of the different things. And so I was in that space of like, oh, okay, like I need to take care of my physical health. But there was this voice in the back of my head from when I was the fat little kid that was like, you don't deserve that. Like you're not good enough. Like you've never been good enough. Your body's never been good enough. Like why would you take care of your body now? And so getting acquainted with that voice of like, what is that story trying to tell you and where is it trying to lead you? Because once you can identify that voice, like you're saying, the bro or the sis that's popping up in your head, you can become a more active participant in the conversation of like, okay, I recognize that this is coming up to try and keep me safe in some sort of capacity. But oftentimes, what's safe is something that is like instant gratification, void filling. And it's not looking beyond like, what is the void that I am trying to fill with this thing? And we're typically filling that void with some sort of dopamine hit, whether it be nicotine or alcohol or calling your friends up and having a bitch session or going to the fast food joint down the road or opening up the freezer and eating the ice cream or whatever it may be. Our brain wants dopamine. So if you can start to look for natural ways to give yourself dopamine and intentionally feed yourself more of those, and not feeding yourself in the sense of food, but like spending time with your daughter, going out into the sun, having meaningful conversations with your family, watching your favorite movie with your friends, making it like an engaged sort of thing versus like a very passive sort of thing. Looking for like ways to receive that natural dopamine really helps you start to take a more proactive role in your life of starting to shift and change that narrative as opposed to like feeling as though you are the victim to it. And yeah, stepping into, so going back to like the general question of health is like, first you want to identify what are the stories that you're telling yourself about yourself that aren't inherently true, and where did you learn those things in the first place. And then from that place, it's like you said, there's this other voice inside of you that's this like, oh, I look up to this person, like this is the voice of like truth and like my soul, my reason. And starting to reconnect to that voice and pour more intention and pour more focus into that. So again, for me, when I was in that situation with my health, I was like, okay, who's the healthy version of me? Like, what's that version of Kat like? She has clear skin. She looks in the mirror. She loves what she sees. She's feeding herself nutrient dense foods. She's making sure that her blood sugar is balanced, all of those different things. And so I created that vision of who that version of myself was. And then, like you were saying earlier, I brought it into the daily actions where it was like, okay, how do I break this up into bite-sized pieces where I am then showing up with that as often as I possibly can, not having to be 100% perfect 100% of the time, because the more that I start to do that, the more I create these pattern interrupts inside of the subconscious mind that are so used to this destructive habit, and start to form the supportive habits that with time and with consistency just rewire the subconscious mind and create these new neural pathways that becomes the new baseline and that becomes the new normal.
And that's the hard part. It's not I'm going to imagine myself, this is what I'm going to look like, this is how I'm going to look at myself in the mirror, this is the way I'll perform. That's the easy step, right?
Yep.
And that's what a lot of people I think don't understand, is that chunking it up, like you said, into bite-sized pieces is a really good analogy, because you're always going to be hungry. They're not big.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big sandwich. It's like these little steps that are hard, and they take a bunch out of you because you have that little bro in the back of your head. It's like, hey, dude, like you've been so good lately. Like it's been a week since you haven't had nicotine. Dude, just go grab a Zyn. Like you deserve it, you know?
Yep.
Boom. That's the hard part. Like, um, oh man, you were just so motivated for 4 days. You did X amount of miles. You're fit, dude. Take the day off.
Yep.
Hey, maybe that's the easy way, right? And I also was, when you were talking, it's like where we are right now is the safe place because it's the place that we don't want to be anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of sounds like really negative. I love where I'm at right now. I have a beautiful family. I just got a beautiful job, right? And I'm super grateful, but I also want to move forward, and I have achievements and goals that I still have.
Mm-hmm.
And to get that, it's like, this is my safe place. I'm just talking about Quinn on a little island. That's my safe place. I don't want to be there, right?
Yeah.
I want to be somewhere else, but in a way that's present and intentional, because
Mm-hmm.
very easy to just not be happy, not be intentional with the present moment because you're seeking that manifested self in the future. I'm not going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, I think it comes with this whole plate of balance. Like you said, you were like,
Yeah.
oh my God, here's a career. I'm kicking ass. I'm starting it all up, but you lost focus of your health. And then what about your spirituality? What part of is that lacking? And so it just kind of plays this whole part into human existence, this video game that we play, which is just so mind fucking.
Yeah.
So mind fucking. Like, how can we just master it in a way that's just easy breezy cover girl? I don't know.
I feel like I love everything that you said, and it's so true because it's like, yeah, where we are on the safe little island, we can be so unfulfilled with it, but it's the safety zone. It's what you know to be true. So it's like, oh my God, why would I move away from here when I know that there's something over there that I really want, and I'm going to long for that, and I'm going to feel like I need that in order for me to feel happy. It's like what I found for myself, and I mean, it took me years within this journey that I'm on right now to get to this place where it's like, the more that I enjoy the now and I integrate and I absorb everything that I have, I actually move so much closer to that. It's like this win-win situation where it's not like I can have one or the other. I get to experience both by being able to remember this version of myself, this manifested like dream that I desire to have, while simultaneously giving myself full permission to be so present in what currently exists, because this is only here for a short season, always, regardless of like how stuck somebody thinks they are. It's like if you're in like your comfort zone, you're still only in that comfort zone for a short season, because inevitably some sort of human experience is going to come along that's going to take you out of it. So it's like bring that level of like presence and gratitude and like joy to the situation that you're currently in, because that automatically moves you closer to having what it is that you want, and perhaps brings the opportunities along with it. One of the coolest things that I've seen for myself is like, yes, having this vision of what I want to create for myself, but like fully diving into the life that I have today, people, opportunities, circumstances, things start to show up in my life that it's like, whoa, this feels a little too good to be true, that this is like coming into my reality. Like, is this a mistake? It's like, no, that's what manifestation is. It's you're energetically opening yourself up to the fact that this potential reality can become your reality, as long as you like give yourself permission to know that it's there, but ultimately like give yourself to the life that you currently have as well.
Yeah, like stepping into the skin of that self is almost the
Yep.
permission you're giving yourself, right? Like, I heard this amazing quote, and it'll kind of help a listener to understand it. But this guy said, imagine you just were handed a check for $1 million, and you go to the bank and you deposit it into the bank. Now, the bank is gonna deposit the funds within 10 business days. So you do not have $1 million. You do not have access to $1 million. But imagine yourself, the way you would walk, the way you would talk, the way you would handle yourself in every search situation right now, if you knew that in 10 days you were about to have $1 million deposited into your account. You're not rich yet. You do not have $1 million, but your energetic shift would manifest everything around that $1 million.
Oh
And
my God. I'm obsessed with that. That is so good.
it literally, like me and my fiance, we were joking. Like we still say, I got $1 million in the bank. Like
Hmm.
we say it that way as if we're going to act that way. And not that
Hmm.
money brings happiness, but money brings a sense of security and energy that like you feel different. Think about that. Like you will
Hmm.
feel different if you think, I got in 10 days that money's being deposited.
Yep.
What am I going to do? Like, what would you do? I
Yeah. I
feel
mean,
fuzzy, like,
totally. Money brings options. It brings freedom. And like I think that ultimately at the end of the day, for us as all as human beings, like we seek that and connection. And it's like we place this perception of like, oh, okay, like within money, I can have more of those things. And so if it is, it's like if $1 million is being deposited into your bank account within the next 10 days, you show up with more freedom. You show up with more gratitude. You show up with more options, more ability to connect with the people in your life on a deeper level. It's like if you can do that independent of the money being there, then that's how you start to manifest more of it into your life. Like when you start feeling like you're saying, like you feel rich, you feel fuzzy inside
mhm.
of yourself energetically. And I know that like that's the piece that a lot of times people like can't hang out with because they can't see it. They can't actually physically see the energetic exchange and shift that is happening within that. But it's like, I don't know. I'm such a firm believer in the fact that it's like any hard thing in life requires some level of faith. And it's like, or any hard thing that is like long lasting and fulfilling requires some level of faith, whether it be in yourself, the fact that you're going to finish the race, the fact that you're going to manifest that money, whatever it may be, that requires some level of faith. And that's equally as hard as staying in the position that you're in and feeling like shit about your life. So it's like, that saying that you see all the time on the internet of like, choose your hard. Like you can choose to be in this place where like possibility is all around you, or you can choose to stay in the hard reality of like, oh no, it's not, and therefore not receive as a byproduct of it.
Mhm. When you're living a life that's not enough, you'll never get enough. When you're living a life of enough and you know you have more to get and more to give, more will only come. And like, it's so easy for me to say that, but it's so much harder to do. Like, I get to here all day and, say shit like that, and it's true. Faith is so hard. The belief is so hard. Believing in yourself. Like, um, and another one that someone told me is like, why, why, why wouldn't you be your own best friend? And it was like, well, I don't know. Well, you have best friends around you, right? Why won't you be your best friend?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I don't know. And you think
Yep.
about it, you're like, I am pretty cool. I know everything about myself. I know what I've been through. I know what I can do. I know all my secrets, my demons. I know everything. I should be my best friend because if I could be my best friend, I could be the best friend to anyone else.
Yep.
Um, it was just, but I think that's a part of the energetic faith and the relationship you have to have with the energy. And it is like I put quotes around that, but people sometimes can't connect. What does that mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the feeling, it's the relationship, it's the emotion.
Yep.
That's the energy. And I think because it was hard for me to realize it. Someone had to like say, be your best friend. That's energy,
I
Like,
love that.
it's like fuck. Be your
How
best friend.
long have you been into all of this kind of stuff? Like, how long have you been into energy and like, yeah, like wanting to use it in your favor versus kind of like being like, okay, the world happens to me.
Yeah, well, I've actually never told this story on the podcast, but in 2016, I was going through a really weird time, like in college, um, really battling with my identity, like really not knowing who I really was. Um, and I took some psilocybin mushrooms with my best friend Mike, Mikey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I did it to escape, but it really put me in front of myself and like what I was on earth to do,
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I actually didn't sleep for like 24 hours. Like I wasn't even tripping anymore. I was just like so in love. Like that's the best way I can explain it. I was just so in love with everything, like everything.
Mm-hmm.
The wind, the gloominess, the sadness, the happiness. I mean, I was so in love and like I couldn't sleep. I mean, I was just so energetic. And then that night I actually read a whole book, like The Power of the Now. My dad
Yep. Power of
handed it,
now.
yeah, my dad handed it to me and I was like, dude, I'm never gonna read like my old self. Like I was like, dude, never gonna read this. I'm gonna go out with the buds. I'm gonna drink a six pack and like have a good time and try to get a lady. Like
Yep.
it was such a toxic way of living. But and then I read that whole book and it all made sense. I was like, this is what he's explaining. Like this right here. Because I had an awakening. Like this is the best way to
Mm-hmm.
explain it. I've told my friends I was a completely different person. Um, my mom didn't know who I was after. My friends didn't know who I was. They were literally like, dude, you're different. Like Nick, Jack, all of them were just like, dude, what is going on? I was like, dude, I was just calm, I was just happy, and I was loving. And I
Yep.
think they've seen a part of that. They haven't seen that living through me. And I was living it. Like, but had that huge crazy shift happen. And as life goes on, you just start becoming more yourself. And I was on such an extreme of like the spiritual side. Like I would wear no shoes and I was teaching yoga and I was doing yoga and meditating constantly. And, I went to Indonesia and did a teacher training out there and like I
Yep.
fully dove into it, And as I'm doing all of that, I've realized like also being yourself is so spiritual as well. My humor, my
Mm-hmm.
jokes, like the way I live my life, I kind of just became comfortable in my own skin. Because
Yep.
even when you are in the loving state and you're the happiest you're ever feeling, I wasn't necessarily living my truth. That makes,
Totally.
you know what I'm saying? Like
100%.
that.
I feel like a lot of the times I relate to you so much. I feel as though like we go from like one extreme to another to be able to find the balance between the two. It's like going from, like you said, let's go get a six pack, let's go to the bars, let's find a lady, so on and so forth, to the other end of like, okay, fully spiritual, no shoes, yoga all the time, so on and so forth. To be able to come back to the middle, and like you said, most spiritual experience that you can possibly have is to be the fullest version of yourself, like
Yeah.
the most authentic version of yourself. And I think it's so funny. There's a lot of parallels between the two of us, because I had that moment as well where I was like, rock bottom moment. I woke up on the floor of my apartment in Boise, Idaho, not remembering how I got there from the night before, partying so hard I probably shouldn't have been there the next morning. And I woke up that day on the floor and was like, Kat, you need to change your fucking life. And I like got up, I went and looked in the mirror. I got on Instagram after that. Well, looked in the mirror and was like, no, like this can't happen anymore. Like, this isn't it. This isn't, like, you're hiding something, you're masking something, you're like, you're really repressing some shit. Like, we need to
Mhm.
figure this out. And later that day, I got on Instagram and there was a podcast about manifestation. And I had wrote off manifestation in the past. I thought it was a bunch of bullshit. And I was like, this feels really divine. So I listened to that podcast episode. Every single thing in the episode was landing and resonating with me. And so I binged that podcast for the rest of the day. I went on a hike and I like made the promise to myself that I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know why I felt like I needed to do it, but I was going to commit myself to learning about and implementing manifestation into my life for 1 full year to see what would happen. And I went so far into like the realm of all of that. And within the span of the year, I had completely changed my life. I saw myself as a completely different version of myself. I was so much more connected and not as triggered and seeing the world in a different way. I manifested my first 6 figures in business. Like, everything was completely different. And then there was like this weird identity crisis when I got to that place. And I was like, what the fuck is this? This isn't me either. And the past few years has been this like homecoming of like, oh, like you said, most spiritual thing that you can do is actually just be yourself. It's not
Yeah.
like this guru who's like on her shit all the time and knows everything that's going on, that can't swear or be funny or like
Yeah.
pick jokes or like judge somebody from time to time, because that's the realm that I was in. To really come back to this place of like, oh, okay, like who I am right now is good enough and is always going to be good enough to get me to where I'm wanting to go and where my soul is trying to lead me to.
With a sense of humor and a sense of realness. Like that was the biggest thing for me. It was just like I crack jokes. I'm funny. I say shit. Balls,
Yeah.
like when I ride my bike, my taint hurts, like you're
Yep.
you deal with it, riding bikes sometimes doesn't feel good. And I was just so far that like, yeah, I wanted to learn more. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just felt I went to I hit such a high in life that there was no more to learn. I was like, this is it. This is
Mm-hmm.
Ram Dass. This is Eckhart Tolle. This is it. This is where they all arrived, and I could put my feet up, and then boom. No, this is not like you still have to like go through hardships, cry your eyes out, be vulnerable. Like that shit just doesn't go away when you're happy. You
No.
know, like I just came back to Quint, and
Yes.
I could still talk about energetic shifts, spirituality, meditation, consciousness, ego. I mean, I could still dharma go into all of it, but
Yep.
I can also crack jokes and I can also talk about like what's going on in Kat's life, like what's the tea?
Totally.
You want to watch some Love Is Blind later?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the perfect blend between the two. I feel as though that, yeah, that's like that people struggle with that. It is. It's like typically an extreme. It's like it's either this or that. It's like, oh, where's the nuance? Where's the gray space? Where's like the dance between both?
Yeah. That's where it's almost like, you know, I was probably a cringy guy.
Oh man, the
You know?
cringe that I've like my life has been over the past few years has been hilarious. Watching people from Gunnison see my stuff on Instagram, I'm like, y'all are probably like, who the hell is that girl?
Yeah, but you see, when I look at it though, Kat, it's like I come at it with like I feel you, like
Yeah.
because I'm sure people from Gunny, were just like, what the fuck is this guy? Quinn's doing yoga now. The fuck, you know?
When you were doing all of that, I was so fucking hyped on it. I was
Yeah.
like over here cheering you on.
No, and I still love it. I still do it, but I could see myself in like 10, 15 years teaching yoga again when I'm like old.
Mm-hmm.
Got like a little
Love
gray
that.
on, like
10, 15 years when you're old,
20. I said 20 or 30. Yeah, 20 or 30 years. I just want to be like that old, who's like throwing handstands at like 62. You're really just
you
like,
will.
I want to go to that guy's yoga class because
Totally.
I want to be like that guy. Um,
Absolutely.
but for right now, I'm just riding bikes and like being a dad.
Absolutely.
Old
Do you guys
another.
have your coffee truck?
We sold.
You sold. Cool.
Manifest. Yeah, that was that was probably the hardest 2 years of my life.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was just it takes so much money. The output wasn't crazy. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't
Yep.
crazy. So like maybe a really good day would be 3,000, but
Yep.
we put in, you know, a grand, but then we
Yep.
have to wait a week until our next event. So I was really struggling with my relationship with money because I didn't like
Hmm.
my career. I was a business owner, hated it. We were about to have a baby. I didn't know what I was gonna do. Um, and so I literally was just like, I'm I need a change. I am wealthy, I am happy, I am where I need to be. And the person I sold it to is a real estate agent.
Hmm.
I went to pick his brain, just like, hey, dude, like, what is this like? Because I always knew I'd be really good at real estate, just because I love talking to people, and I grew up with a builder. Chris, like,
Totally.
that as a builder. My mom's a real estate. I feel like I'd be good at it, and so I just talked to him, and I said, yeah, I'm really struggling. I think I'm gonna, try to get my license. And he goes, dude, I gotta go right now. I'll give you a number. She'll pay, X amount of dollars, which to me at this point was just like, I've never even seen that much money. She'll pay right here and there, right now. I'll give you her number. That day I'd say like 4 days have passed. I got an interview, got the job, quit my job that I hated. I didn't hate, I wasn't making money. I was like, couldn't pay rent.
Yep.
Boom. Now this is where I'm at, property management and getting close to my real estate license, whole new level of happiness and success that like I love my job and I love how I feel.
Yep.
But it all started with the trailer and everything had to happen for a reason so I could
To
be
get you there.
like everything. I learned so much about business, so much about failure, so much about getting through the hardest of hard to be where I'm at now. But it was
Yep.
like the person I sold it to gave me the opportunity. Like, how
Hmm.
crazy is that? I sold my business to the person that was going to give me the opportunity
You're
of my life.
No,
So,
what's so funny? I first of all, I love that. And one of the things that has been such a challenge for me over the past few years, but like I see payoff every single time is like when you want something great, you have to trade in what is good. When you want something that's amazing, you have to trade in what's great. When you want something that's fabulous, you have to trade in what's amazing. When you want something that's mind blowing, you have to trade in what's like that thing. And it's like, oh, of course, you end up in that position where it's like, okay, this thing has been hard. It was good to me in some ways, but it was really fucking hard. Hand the keys over to it. Next keys are presented to you.
boom, like that.
Cool.
That's the
So
thing.
cool.
Like we were in the trailer when we were having the
Mhm.
conversation. Like that's what is crazy about that story. It was like I was standing in the trailer, talking to him as he presented it.
Yep.
Yeah, just like how the universe just it gives you these little clues. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
and like I don't think you're supposed to be necessarily doing any of one thing. Like that's what's great. You have like this this spectrum of things, and as you go, you'll be given these hints and clues and directions, and you just say yes or no. And like
Yes.
doors are open, doors are closed, but there's so many other ones, and like it's just so crazy. Like just the doors you will go through in the different times of lives. Because I'm a dad, and I'm in a whole new life than all my buddies, and where
Yep.
they're at. It's like I can't just go get in the car and like go ride my bike in Tucson for like 4 days. I'd love to, but I got my daughter that I want to spend time with, and like my fiance, and
Yep.
I've got just different, like different what's the word for it? Priorities.
Yep.
So, but it's just crazy how this universe works.
Totally. And I want to put that out for the listeners is like, I can imagine every single one of them can like look back in a time in their lives where it's like they didn't know how things were going to work out, but it worked out exactly as it was supposed to.
Yeah.
Like it didn't make sense during the moment, but like looking back in retrospect, you can see that every single like experience is just like connect a dot. It was like, oh, this moment that I thought I completely like blew my life up and did something really bad was actually the moment that led me here, that
Mhm.
led me to this next dot, that led me to this next dot, just like you said. And like we were talking about earlier, is like building that sense of faith within yourself. Like that's the evidence. Like that's the evidence that it's always going to work out, and that like the universe is always going to provide in some sort of way to help you get to ultimately where you're supposed to be. Like you said, you're supposed to be in this place. You're supposed to have different priorities than the people in your life right now. Like this is your path for like exactly what your soul's here to do versus like what their souls are doing.
Yeah. And they're going to tell you what your soul should be doing.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, but no, I'm sorry. I
Totally.
appreciate your input, but like there's different ways to go about that. And like, and I'll even say I probably was someone to give a soul a direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not even in my, that's not my place. And if you are sitting in a car and you're feeling like, what the fuck am I doing? Where am I? My life is hectic. It sucks. I'm miserable. Ask yourself, how can this benefit me? What is this life experience right now going to do for me in a year? Like there's something there. There's something there
Yes.
to teach you something so that you can move on. Um,
1000%.
yeah, and it's uh like injuries. I watched this. You should watch it, Kat. It's badass. Listeners, you should totally watch it too. It's called oh God. uh I might even I'll have to text it to you if I remember it. But it's about this paraplegic. So he was
Mm.
um he was living his best life on two legs. He went to Vail, Colorado, hit a jump, landed on his neck wrong, and he was paralyzed. And he was,
Mm-hmm.
miserable. What am I gonna do? Like, how am I ever gonna be the same? Or, like just he was wrecked. Like you lose your legs, like he was just in a completely scared spot. And then he loved snowboarding, and so he got into the paraskiing or the forget what you call it, but you like you're in a box with one ski, uh,
Mm-hmm.
so you can ski when you're paralyzed. And so this guy, he was like, this is freedom. This is my purpose. He quit his job and he's like, Dad, I'm going to do this for a career. And
Mm.
documentary explains how he went from like hating his life as a paraplegic to like this guy was he's hucking like 40, 50-foot cliffs on this thing. He's doing backflips onto rails on this thing. This guy is doing massive tricks over big gaps. I mean, he took this sport. He said, I'm going to be the first to do everything. First one to do a backflip, first one to do a cliff, first one to do a backflip off a rail onto a rail. Like he was just manifested it. And now he's like,
Yes.
hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, making probably too much money. He lives in Vail and all he does is ski.
That's badass.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's so cool. It's called like Over the Edge or something. I'll text it to you and I will put
Yeah.
it in the description for everyone who's listening. It's like, what the fuck is that? but
Yeah.
in the description, because it's like a must watch, because you look at your circumstance where you're at now and you're just like, I got it pretty good, you know.
Yep.
Ah,
Yep. And I'm in it for a reason, whatever it may be for the person who's listening to this. It's like, yep, I'm going through this for a absolute reason.
totally. And so, Kat, I want to change a little subject here. So, can
Mhm.
you explain like what is it? What is your business? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so I have a coaching business where I primarily work with women. And so there's two different things that I do. One is one-on-one coaching, which is typically for somebody who's an entrepreneur or a high achiever that's wanting to like take their life to the next level. So I work with a lot of like millionaires or like best-selling authors or like actresses or comedians that are like wanting to have their big sort of break within that in my one-on-one coaching. And then aside from that, I have a program that's all about healing your money mindset, because typically with creating like the wealth that you desire, it doesn't just have to do with your relationship with money, but it has to do with your relationship to yourself. So I help people identify their different limiting beliefs, as well as any mental, emotional, or energetic blockages that they're experiencing. And we work on deep subconscious reprogramming. A lot of the stuff that we were talking about earlier is like the surface of it, of like identifying what are those different stories? Where did they learn them? What do they need to heal from those things? And incorporating different healing modalities, as well as I specialize in trauma healing from different like mental and emotional traumatic experiences that somebody's gone through, to actually clear that energy out of their body so that they can bring that mind body connection back online and get to the place where they can go and pursue whatever it is that they want to pursue, whether that be a specific career, starting a business, getting into the relationship that they want to be in, moving to the city that they want to be in, just like doing life on their own terms. So that's the primary bit of work that I do. But it's all under the umbrella of like teaching people about the power of intentional manifestation and the law of attraction and these different universal laws that are playing out at all times, and just understanding themselves more deeply so that they can actually live life on their own terms and like feel as though they're empowered to go and do it.
Dope. That is awesome.
It's pretty rad. And I'm so grateful. I mean, like, if you would have asked me when I lived in Gunnison that this was the path that I would be on, I would have like been like, huh? Like what? Like I have no clue what you're talking about. So to like be in this place now, I'm just like, wow, this it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. I often say to people, like, I don't have an option to do anything else, because like I just know that this is what I'm here in this human body is supposed to be doing.
That's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
That's rad. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like you're a software engineer for humans.
Totally. I'm just updating the software inside of people so that they can install the apps that they want to have.
Yeah, here's a virus, change that. Here's a little boom.
Totally. That's such a good way to look at it.
No, as you were saying that, I was like, software engineer, there she is. So you should put that on your bio, software engineer for humans.
For humans. Oh, it's so good.
It is a satisfying path, a healer, you know, like
Mhm.
it's just, and it is draining. So like, if you don't mind me asking, like, what do you do to cleanse that energy? Because it is, as someone who taught three classes in a day, I mean,
Yep.
it takes a toll. So how do you do that?
Totally. So I feel as though, honestly, the biggest thing that's like changed my life within being able to feel as though like I'm in charge of my energy is I like eliminated alcohol from my life, because I feel like prior to that I used that as my way to like recharge or like do the things that I needed to do to like feel good. Whereas like now that that's out of my life, like I don't typically ever feel drained. Like I get good sleep, I eat good food, I spend time with like meaningful relationships and friends, I meditate. But like when it comes to the work that I'm doing, I love it so much that it like I get to the end of client call days or like a day like today, and I'm going to feel stoked for the rest of the day. I'm not going to feel empty. I'm not going to feel like I need to recharge. I'm going to feel really, really good about the work that I put forward into the world today. And I feel like for like a lot of us, like that's how we're supposed to feel at the end of the day versus the opposite of it, of like feeling drained or disconnected.
Like you need a drink.
Yeah, totally. Because like in the past I did, and it's like, no, I'm almost 2 years alcohol free and I've never felt better.
Oh my gosh, Kat. And just to let you know, you look so good and
Thank
happy
you.
and healthy. Yeah, like I can see it. Like you're a reflection of what you're doing. Like, I could see you look so good and you just look like you're glowing, you know? And
Thank
so,
you.
yeah, and that's also something that I've, been battling is like, I don't have a problem with drinking. I think a lot of people who drink say that, like I don't. Um,
Mhm.
and I have been so much better. Like I'll go sometimes a whole week and then I'll crack 2 beers on Saturday and then I'll go 3 days and have a beer on Wednesday because the little bro in my head is like, dude, you were doing so good last week. Anything on Wednesday, and so but I've if you haven't heard my podcast in a while, like I have a few people on the podcast, and like that was a big subject is sobriety and like how it completely changes your life. And my mom, I mean, she's been sober for 16 years or something crazy, and like
Yep.
she's a reflection of just glow and happiness. And
Absolutely. Your mom has always been such an inspiration for me within that. Like when I quit drinking, I had then like bachelorette parties and weddings and like all of these things that were coming up. And knowing that like your mom and Missy were like doing it without, I was like, those are my ladies.
totally. And like they were doing it so good, and like they still
Totally.
have fun, and like they're like drinking, but they're not. Like they're at that level. And so
Yeah.
it is so hard when you go into a social setting like that. And so I think, I'm gonna live as if I'm sober, see myself as sober. And there's so many cool, like, because I'm a beer drinker, I don't drink wine, I don't drink hard alcohol. It's
Mhm.
just beer. Like I love a good IPA, and I think that's my
Yeah.
problem. It's some good non-alcoholic um drinks now. Like they're coming out with amazing stuff. Like,
The non-alcoholic wine, like there's some non-alcoholic wines that I'm like, wait, is this the real stuff? Like I almost get freaked out for a second. Not non-alcoholic red wine. Non-alcoholic red wine sucks. It tastes like grape juice and nothing
oh, the
else.
white
But
one.
like the
White.
white ones and like the fake brute wine, it's like, oh, that stuff tastes good.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know about the beers. I haven't heard. I mean, I was never a beer drinker,
Yeah.
which like yeah, but I've heard there's some good ones. There
Yeah.
has to be, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, there's a whole brewing company who like do micro brews for like the IPA drinkers, the lager, like it's it's great. So like there's no excuse why I should keep drinking. Like it's just more of that bro that we were talking about earlier that's just like, no, dude, I can't give that up, man.
Totally.
Yeah. But what else? I was gonna God, I was gonna ask you one more thing. But where could someone find you? Because I do work with a lot of athletes, and a lot of athletes that do listen to my podcast race at a professional level. And even if they don't race at a professional level, I think they have goals, um, both in financial field. But would you ever work with an athlete when it comes to like, hey, I got a big race or like the season or I got this stuff? Like, do you still work with people in that sense with manifestation?
Absolutely, 100%. I feel as though an athlete's the perfect kind of person to master manifestation because there's such a I mean, at least in my experience and what I know of people who are very, very athletic is like almost an unhealthy attachment to their outcome sometimes that then hinders their actual experience within it. And it's like being able to like work through some of those things or like the mental performance aspect of it. Absolutely. 100%.
That's really spot on. Like a lot of athletes have the potential to be really, really good, but they never do good because I think it's the outcome. Like they're solely
So attached to it.
on the outcome of like, I need to take top 20. I need to take top 10. And during the race, even halfway through, if you're not in that position where you want to be, you quit. You know,
Hmm.
like for me, I just love the sense of the sport and the races. And so I think I do good in that aspect because I'm just like, shit, if I do top 20, that's great. If I do top it, I'm not really attached to like the end goal. Now, if I lose a race, fuck that. I will never lose.
Totally.
Yeah, little guy, little bro in the back of the head. It's like, don't say that, dude. You're never gonna
Yeah.
lose. You're never gonna lose. Um, but that's good. And we're like, where could we find like where can they find you?
Absolutely. So, two best places to find me and become a part of what I have going on. I have a podcast called The No Bullshit Manifestation Show, which Quinn's going to be on. So, y'all will hear him over there as well.
Yeah,
And the other place that's best to find me is over on Instagram. And my handle is Kat Cozad Coaching, which I'm sure Quinn will put in the show notes.
I will for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I think this is an amazing spot to call it so you can enjoy the
Absolutely.
rest of your night. We hit just a little bit over an hour, and I think that's a perfect time if anyone's commuting to work or driving, or man, if you just got done with a good day, a bad day, I think this is a good podcast for you.
Yeah, now your day just got better because
I
you got
did.
to listen to two hometown buddies chat shit about the universe.
Yeah, who just became spiritual gangsters for a while. Yeah, my gosh. Well, Kat, it was so wonderful to catch up with you, and I can't wait to see what you do in the future. And what you're doing right now is phenomenal. So, can't wait to be on No Bullshit Manifestation. That's going to be fun. So, guys, stay tuned. Follow her on No Bullshit Manifestation. That's correct, right?
Yeah, the No Bullshit Manifestation Show.
The No Bullshit Manifestation Show. That's perfect. But yeah, guys, stay tuned and thanks for listening. Kat, we can stay on. I'll just end the recording.